She's navigated some acclaimed roles in everything from indies like Made in Dagenham to blockbusters. Remember the scandalous Amy Dunn in Gone Girl. Now she's providing the narration for an audiobook of Paula Hawkins' new novel, A Slow Fire Burning. The best-selling author of The Girl on the Train and Into the Water has gifted us another gripping story. The lives of some eccentric characters are brought together and dark secrets revealed from their past after the discovery of a murdered young man on a canal boat. This enthralling read is made even more riveting when delivered by someone who knows a thing or two about bringing life to notorious characters. Rosamund, welcome.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Were you familiar with Paula's work when you were approached to provide the narration for A Slow Fire Burning?
I certainly was, yes. I mean, I think since making Gone Girl, I've sought out these female voices in the thriller genre. And I think, you know, there's a whole sort of level of the female experience that Gillian Flynn brought so wonderfully to life with Gone Girl. And it kind of woke up the world. You know, people started looking at their marriages differently. People started looking at relationships differently. And The Girl on the Train, obviously the adaptation followed a couple of years. I'm not quite clear on the dates, but quite soon after Gone Girl. And I thought it was a brilliant idea because I've also always thought, what happens if you saw something terrible just in the kind of chance encounter of a fleeting glimpse from a train window? In fact, it's haunted me since I was a child, and I first saw the Miss Marple, the 450 from Paddington, where somebody oversees a murder as two trains pass. So yeah, the fact that Paula honed in on that for The Girl on the Train, it really grabbed me. So I jumped at the chance to do A Slow Fire Burning.
I've heard the audiobook and it is very thrilling. You mentioned about women voices and female voices suddenly being listened to, particularly after Gone Girl. And one of the most interesting things about this book is that it has 3 women characters at its nucleus. Was that an appealing part of the story for you?
It's a pleasure to play all of these people because I think when you're doing an audiobook, it's your job to fully inhabit the characters, to feel with them and breathe with them and, you know, be able to convey their interactions. So sometimes you're in conversation with 2, but if you've thought about them carefully enough, then you can fully inhabit them. And I loved the fact that she's got these women with tremendous mettle. She's got a young girl who's in her early 20s, who's had an incredibly difficult life. And everything is stacked against her, but she's such a fighter. She's a brilliant, brilliant character. And then she's got an equally fantastic character who's in her 80s, this woman called Irene, who's dismissed, as so many people are when they reach that age. And she knows exactly how the world sees her, and also how there's a certain power sometimes in being underestimated because you can surprise people.
There's a book within the book in this book, and I think it very subtly but cleverly sends up the way men write women's narratives. I was wondering if you think the same thing affects screenwriting in movies. Do you think the issue of men writing awful women characters is an issue in film as much as it can be in novels?
I think nowadays, actually, there's tremendous nervousness among male screenwriters. So, for instance, one good friend of mine who's a screenwriter I approached recently because I thought he would be brilliant for this project that I have in mind. I mean, he immediately hesitated as feeling that he didn't have the right to write a female-centric story. You know, it's loomed so large in everyone's minds that I think it's almost tipping the balance the other way, that men who I believe would be capable of writing it are now, you know, really hesitating and thinking twice. I mean, it is great that they are thinking twice, because before we've had a presumption that, you know, a man knows a woman's experience as well as she does, which is obviously false. But historically, great women's parts have also been written by men, and we mustn't sort of, you know, completely tip the balance the other way.
Rosamund, can I just ask you,
Yes.
we've been talking this morning earlier about life drawing and feeling the gaze of people looking at you. And you've spoken in the past about fame and how you feel it's like being eaten alive on the red carpet. And I just wondered, because you have just so many projects now, you're just a completely recognisable person. What are your coping mechanisms now for this gaze?
On the subject of life drawing, I remember sitting for the artist Stuart Pearson Wright when I was in my early 20s. And I remember feeling how very, very difficult it was, because when your photograph is being taken of you, you can sort of make things better for the photographer. You can stand in a different way, you can hold yourself, you can pose, you can interact with the camera and improve, like it's a performance. Whereas there was something so vulnerable about being drawn, because you couldn't make it any better. You just had to be you. And I found, you just had to give over, really,
Yes.
and let them see you, see through you, see everything about you, and
sort of naked in every sense, really.
Yes, even though, it was clothed. And I remember Stuart discussing there was a pressure in drawing and painting young women, because he said even though you try and get away from it, there's still a sort of expectation on the artist that on some sort of cultural level, you're still supposed to honor the sort of beauty of a young woman. Whereas, it's a tremendous freedom to draw an older man, because you're allowed to kind of just really dive into all the expressions in a face. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought how maybe that's what I felt. I felt as a young woman, I was not a great subject, and maybe a bit of an some impingement on his freedom or something.
Rosamund, I'd just like to ask you one more question. I learned that your parents are opera singers. And that clearly cultivated a very fertile ground for your acting career. But were you ever encouraged or even tempted to go into a musical direction?
I wasn't, because I think that wasn't the means by which I needed to express myself. I had that with acting. I had that with pretending to be other people or with words, but it was never music for me. But recently, actually, I did play instruments. I did play the cello from a very young age. And during lockdown, after a 20-year gap, I picked up my cello again.
That's what lockdown did. It gave us all hobbies. We all picked up things and dusted them off and started playing the piano again or playing the violin, and you picked up your cello.
Is that what you did?
I started playing the piano again. It's a true story.
It's really interesting, isn't it? It's where the brain goes when it's not under quite such intense pressure or had some time to wander.
Rosamund, you have an extremely long Wikipedia page. I think you deserve the break. I think you deserved the break. Thank you for talking to us today. The audiobook of A Slow Fire Burning, read by Rosamund Pike, is available now. Edith podcast is available now on Crooked Media, and Rosamund is starring in The Wheel of Time, available on Amazon,